Well, good morning. Today we're looking at First Timothy chapter 6 and verse 9 and 10. Uh, Paul is talking about something that people are very sensitive about, and that's about money. So let's just take a look for a moment what God says about our relationship and our perspective on money. So in First Timothy chapter 6 and verse number 9, they that will be rich, that is, who desire to be rich, fall into temptations. There's some temptations that come along with that desire. And what he says is it also is a snare. Isn't that rather peculiar? There's a temptation that comes along with wanting to be rich, and there's a trap. And he says, and they fall into many foolish and hurtful desires, which drown men in destruction and perdition. Boy, it just doesn't sound right, does it? That the desire to be rich and have a lot of money can have some severe consequences. That is, there's temptations that come along with it. Well, what kind of temptations? Well, the kind that are evil, and also the kind that will lead you away from God. And so it ends in destruction. I mean, it's a bad end. But watch what he says here. For the love of money, now watch it here. It's not money of and in itself. Money is amoral. There's nothing evil or good about it. In fact, if you have a good man who has the right attitude about money, it can be a useful thing. I mean, a good man can do a lot of good things with his money. And so he says it's the love of money, not money, but the love of money is a root of all evil. I mean, it can take you down the wrong path, can it? Now, notice here, which many have coveted for, and that sounds like a whole lot of folks, that they have erred from the faith. See, here's what happens. When a person gets caught up and his desire is to be wealthy, that becomes his goal and purpose in life. It causes him to go astray. Now, there's a story that Jesus talks about, which we call it the parable of the sower. It's back in Matthew chapter 13. And Jesus talks about a sower that scatters seed everywhere. And of course, if you remember, some falls upon the hard path, and that's the kind of follow you never get to first base with, and some on the stony soil. And of course, he's referring to that the seed, starts to grow, but there's no depth to the soil, so that follow doesn't last very long. And then the thorns, and what he's saying there in the thorns is that it chokes out the word of God. The seed is scattered on this thorny soil, and all the weeds and everything that choke out the word of God. Now, when Jesus explains that, he says, here's what's really going on with that thorn kind of person. He said it's the deceitfulness of riches and the cares of the world that choke out the word of God. Now, let me just sort of sum it up. You have to be careful when money means too much to you. You know, Jesus said you can't serve both God and mammon. There's a conflict there. And so you have to be careful about money, that it doesn't become your God. And just let me remind you what Jesus said here. It's the love of money, not money, and make sure it's your servant and you're not a servant of it. A lot of lessons there. See you tomorrow.